Today with Talking Scuba, I'm going to be explaining to you how to make nitrox the easy, uncomplicated way. Now, blending nitrox is a very simple thing to do, but if you look on the internet, it looks very complicated. But that is definitely not the case. You don't need to be a mathematician, a physicist, a chemist or a biologist. You really don't. The process is very simple. Before you take your cylinder to the compressor and add some air, you simply add some pure oxygen first. And voila! Nitrox! And that, my friends, is it. And if that's all you wanted to know, well done. You can turn your computer off and go and have a well-deserved cup of tea. But as I'm sure you're aware, there's quite a lot more. I personally always dive with nitrox, regardless of the depth or the length of the dive. And I'll explain why. Very simply, it enables me to stay down longer. Buddy pairs on air turn the dive before I turn my dive when I'm on nitrox, regardless of the amount of air we still have. So, what exactly is nitrox? Quite simply put, nitrox is a breathing gas that contains a higher concentration of oxygen compared to regular air. And what that means to you and me as the diver, we can considerably cut down on the amount of nitrogen that our bodies absorb during the dive. It is so important to realise that we add oxygen not because we need more oxygen, but because we need less nitrogen. So, getting back to the matter in hand, let's start blending some nitrox. The first thing we need is an oxygen tank of pure oxygen. We need your diving cylinder, your 12 or 15 litre cylinder, and of course we need our compressor. So the first thing we do is we connect our oxygen cylinder to our dive cylinder using what we would call a whip. This is simply a one-way hose with a fairly accurate pressure gauge on it. The whip has a needle valve, and that means that we can very accurately monitor and measure the amount of pure oxygen we put into the diving cylinder. And I'll cover that a little later. Once we have filled the diving cylinder up with the right amount of oxygen, we then complete the fill with air. And the final step is to analyse the gas. Now, in this next section, I'm going to explain how you calculate the gas mix that you need for your next dive, and how you calculate how much O2 to add to your diving cylinder. Now, I should add here that anyone wanting to dive using a nitrox mix must attend a course and get certified. And this especially applies to anyone wishing to blend their own gases. Working with pure oxygen is dangerous. And anybody working with pure oxygen needs to be aware of those dangers and how to avoid any problems. A major part of the gas blenders course is safety. And if everybody follows the safety procedures, everyone will be fine. There are other ways of making your nitrox mix. This way of putting oxygen in first and then topping it up with air is referred to as the cascade system. And it's called a cascade system because the oxygen tanks are often linked together. You might have 3 or 4 all daisy-chained together. And because the oxygen isn't pumped, the oxygen tank must have a higher pressure in it than your cylinder. So you start off the oxygen tank with the lowest pressure and take what you can from that until the two pressures equalise. Then, if you still need more O2 in your cylinder, you move to the next oxygen tank with a higher pressure and take some more oxygen until you have enough in your cylinder. This way, the last cylinders in the cascade maintain the highest pressure, and that means that you can get maximum oxygen out of the tanks without them all running down to a level that's no good to anybody. As I said earlier, there are other ways of making and blending your nitrox, but that's for another video. We don't want to talk at the moment about membrane systems and all those great things, but for the moment the cascade system is probably the most commonly used in all of your dive clubs, dive centres and places where you get a top up. And if you get the chance when you pop into your dive centre next time, ask to have a look, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to show you how they blend their nitrox. Now, if you're still with me, thank you. I suppose you'd call this section 3. And here I'm going to run through how we work out our nitrox mix, the nitrox mix that we need for our next dive, and how we calculate the amount of oxygen to add to your diving cylinder to get to the mix that you're looking for. And this is where technology comes to the rescue. There are some lovely little apps that are available to go on your mobile, and I use these extensively. It stops me making a mistake with my maths, and it's very, very simple to use. Now, the first app that I use is called Nitrox Buddy. Now, most of the time we will dive on a 32% blend, EAN 32, Nitrox 32. And that means we've increased the oxygen in our breathing gas from 21% to 32%. Or we've reduced the nitrogen in our breathing gas from 79% down to 68%. Now, just to make life interesting, oxygen becomes toxic at depth. We've now increased our oxygen percentage from 21% to 32%, and now I tell you the oxygen gets poisonous. Now, I don't propose to go into the physics of oxygen toxicity, I really don't, but this little app will show you and give you an indication of how far and how deep you can go on what blend of oxygen. The little slider on the bottom moves from the left 21% air over to the right 50% oxygen. And as you move the slider to the left and reduce the oxygen to 21%, you can see the depth that you can go to increase. It's telling you that your maximum operating depth on air is 56 meters. And as you move the slider to the right, you'll see the EAN number increasing, the percentage of oxygen increasing, and you'll see your depth decreasing until you get to a maximum of 50% oxygen, and the maximum depth you're allowed to go is only 18 meters. So if you're diving on Nitrox 32, which is a very common blend, you'll see here that the maximum depth that you can go is 33 meters. That is your maximum operating depth. And if you wish to dive down to 40 meters, your maximum blend is a 28% mix, i.e. Nitrox 28. So we've now decided what blend we want. Let's say we want Nitrox 32. How do we go about making sure that after adding oxygen to our tank, we end up with Nitrox 32 in it? Well, thankfully we have another app called Gas Blender. And this little app takes all of the hard work out of the calculations required. The top figures there show you your starting gas. So this will be the gas that you come up with after your last dive. So you finished your last dive with 34 bar in your tank, and you were diving with a Nitrox mix of 28, so perhaps you've been down to 40 meters. For your next dive, you've decided that a Nitrox mix of 32 will be perfect for you. And you're going to fill the tank up to 250 bar, knowing that it's going to be quite hot and that the tank will drop back to about 230 bar once it's cooled down. Because this is an app on your mobile, all of the digits are scrollable. You enter the starting gas, whatever you came up with, however many bar you had, what the oxygen mix was, enter that as the starting gas in your tank. Then you simply enter your desired gas, the pressure you're going to fill your cylinder to, and the desired Nitrox mix. Just hit the blend button and it will tell you exactly what you need to know. The top line there is where you're starting from. You have a mixture of EAN 32 and you have 36 bar in the cylinder. The second line down is telling you how much oxygen to add. It is saying add 25 bar. That'll take your cylinder up to an EAN of 61, Nitrox 61, and take the total pressure up to 61 bar. And finally, the air that you have to add to your cylinder. It is telling you to add 171 bar of air. That will take your mixture up to a Nitrox 32, an EAN 32, and that will take your tank up to 232 bar. And the numbers you see on the right there is simply the time it should take you. Now I'm going to be doing a video soon on how to use some of these apps. So if you're interested in that, click on the subscribe button and you'll get a little ping when it's uploaded. But whatever you do, keep diving and keep safe.